the cream of the crop at the tight end position in particular are really starting to separate themselves. Starting out with tier 1, Trey McBride at number 1 and Brock Bowers at number 2. Trey McBride in this matchup versus San Francisco, when you're taking on a Swiss cheese defense like the 49ers are, I've got good things coming for you. And on top of that, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to miss this game with appendicitis. So he is all alone, basically, along with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. Yeah, I think Trey McBride's going to get a bunch of targets in this game, and it's all worked out great ever since they made the switch to Jacoby Brissett. So I'm going to have him easily in number 1. And Brock Bowers at 2 has a massive rebound day. You know, I was talking about this after the game on Thursday last week, and I said, in hindsight, it made a lot of sense. Because if you look back to when Denver played Dallas, and Jake Ferguson had a goose egg in that day, well, the reason why is because instead of going out for a lot of passes, he was left behind blocking because that pass rush is the best in the league. It made sense after the fact with Brock Bowers doing basically nothing outside of one big catch. This is a much different matchup. Versus Dallas' defense, I think it's a great opportunity for Brock Bowers to have a massive rebound game. And I think Kittle belongs in tier 1 as well. I said this last week with Kittle. That was the last week I was going to defend him because everything made sense for him to have a massive game. And it came through. And so I'm happy with him, and I feel very good about this matchup right here at Arizona. I'm going to just warn you right now, I'm still operating under the assumption that Brock Purdy is not going to play. It's going to be Mac Jones, so I do still see Kittle as the tight end 3, but if Purdy played, he would have a case for tight end 2. Dropping down to our next tier, Oronde Gadsden is at number 4, and Cade Otton is at number 5. So with Oronde Gadsden, he is in this position to where you don't know what to do with him because he's coming off an injury and he's practicing fully, and he had his first bad game, and he actually looked really bad. If you did not watch that game on Sunday night against Pittsburgh, he was not good. He dropped several passes in that game before he went down to injury. So is there a chance he has another bounce back game, or is there a chance that he doesn't do anything? I think both are on the table. My bottom line remains this, though. When you have a talent who's coming through at that level, he's a very talented athlete, and he's playing on a high octane passing offense. And you're going up against a softer secondary that just got obliterated by the Texans. Yeah, I'm going to want to take the shot on you in most of this tight end landscape. Cade Otton at 5 at the Buffalo Bills. The only concern with this one is the weather could get nasty. Apparently, I saw it yesterday. It was like 40 degrees, which is not bad, but it's like a 50+% chance of rain. So it could get a little nasty in this game. But Cade Otton, if you look at him, essentially, it's him and Emeka Egbuka. I mean, Cade Otton has been through this period of time where he sees a lot of targets, and we're in that period right now. So you've got to kind of just capitalize on those targets that he's been getting because they're just going to keep coming his way. Jake Ferguson at number 6 and Dallas Goedert at 7. So this is actually a poll that I have seen posted on our site at fsroundup.com, which you can do completely free, by the way, and I'll walk you through how to do it later. But Jake Ferguson at number 6, I picked him over Goddard because of matchup. And listen, I think Jake Ferguson has just a higher ceiling than Goddard does. Really, Goddard's big thing is getting red zone touchdowns. Like him and Jalen do that pitch thing in the red zone, and it works out really well for them. Jake Ferguson gets a lot of red zone work as well, but he also gets a lot of targets throughout the game whenever he's not being forced to stay in for pass protection. And I don't think he'll be in that position against the Raiders this week. With Dallas Goedert versus Detroit, you know, it's becoming more and more clear that A.J. Brown is the bane for the offense. Like, he is not helping this offense whatsoever. The vibes are bad, and Dallas Goedert is kind of becoming his pseudo target number 1 with Jalen Hurts. Now, Devonta Smith is definitely the better fantasy player, but for tight end purposes, Goddard continues to be a tight end 1 because he's got that red zone upside, and if his target share stays this high, he will continue to be a top tier tight end in fantasy football. By the way, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you're getting value so far. And dropping down to our next tier, Sam Laporta is at 8 and Travis Kelce at 9. So Sam Laporta, he's got a questionable tag. He's got a back injury that he did not practice with on Wednesday. So I don't know as of the time of this filming what the practice report is on Thursday. it's definitely one to watch out for. But in this matchup, I think there could be a lot of points scored, or it ends up being a lower scoring game because Philly's defense is really, really good. So I do think that this one could go a couple different ways. I don't love Laporta this week. That's why he's clearly not in tier 2. And then Travis Kelce, I don't love him this week either. And I'll admit, I've been wrong in a lot of my analysis on Travis Kelce. He's actually done very well from a tight end perspective this year. It's not the problem is not that he hasn't been good. The problem is actually that I think this matchup is brutal. I mean, I just covered it with 2 previous tight ends. Those guys were left in to block, basically. Now, Kansas City is so creative offensively with scheming up plays with Andy Reid. He's one of the best play designers of all time. So I don't doubt that Travis Kelce could get a couple of those broken play type of plays. I don't doubt that, but what I do doubt is that he gets 8 or 9 targets in this one. I don't think that's happening, but I think if he gets 5 targets, maybe 4 targets, he could get one of those broken defensive plays that take a 40 or 50 yard gain and still provide you decent upside. Mark Andrews at 10 and Theo Johnson at 11 to round out this tier. So Mark Andrews at Cleveland, I think this matchup is a little gross as well. I think I checked the weather report on this one and that it's another plus 50% chance of rain in this game. But the same thing remains. Lamar Jackson, if he's out there, Mark Andrews has touchdown upside. So against Cleveland, I do think that Cleveland's defense is very good, but there's only so long that they can do well because their offense can't move the ball and the dam breaks. That happens with every defense, even the best ones like Cleveland and Minnesota. So I do think Mark Andrews always has touchdown upside. That's why he'll consistently find himself in the top 10 to 12. Theo Johnson, thank God we don't have to watch Russell Wilson play football anymore. He can do his thing on Cameo, whatever the frick he's doing. I think the best thing for fantasy football from every angle, including defense, is Jameis Winston. And for that reason, he increases the upside of every pass catcher. Theo Johnson has done quietly well the last several weeks, and I've been kind of underrating him as well. Now I'm in. I'm actually in, and I think this week his upside is increased. Now, Green Bay's defense is tough, but I do think with Jameis Winston, that experience can be so fun, and I just kind of want in on it, to be honest with you. And honestly, I kind of see this one going a couple different ways. I think there's definitely people in here that would play Theo over Mark Andrews. So I'm going to go ahead and line this one up on fsroundup.com, show you guys how to create your own starter sit poll. Again, these are completely free to do and completely free to vote on. So I'm going to look up Theo Johnson, then go to him, go to chat, then go to start a poll for week 11, and I'm going to add Mark Andrews to it, and I want you to go vote on this one. Completely free. You'll get live feedback and results from the rest of the community on what you should do with your start sit decisions. You could get the top 270 rankings on the week, the automatic waiver tool, the comparison feature, and the league sync up feature with the premium subscription. And you could get a full team breakdown from me if you would like to get prepared for your fantasy playoffs and make sure we give you personalized advice on what you should do with your roster moving forward. Dropping down to our last tier, I've got David Njoku at 12 versus Baltimore, and Harold Fannon's still right there with him. I mean, listen, David Njoku had less targets than Harold Fannon last week, but he got the touchdown. Harold Fannon was still involved very, very significantly, so you cannot rule him out either. The reality is this: David Njoku and Harold Fannon, you can rank them however you want to, because there's going to be weeks, and there has been in the past, where Njoku out-targets Fannon, but Fannon gets the touchdown. It is a true 50-50 split at the tight end position, but one thing is clear: most of the time, they are both their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel's wide receiver 1 targets, so you need to treat them like that. They're always going to be in the top 12 probably, as long as they continue to see the work they're getting, but I will never feel comfortable starting one or the other. That's the way I look at things, and that's why they're in the bottom tier. Dalton Schultz at 14 and Kyle Pitts at 15. Dalton Schultz at Tennessee, the guy has been quietly good as well. It's actually less exciting than Cade Otton, for example, and Theo Johnson, because this is a guy who doesn't have much run after the catch ability. He needs to be in the end zone to get a touchdown, or he needs to be down the field to get a big play. He's not going to run after the catch. He is wickedly slow. I mean, it's crazy, but I will say this: his involvement over the last several weeks regardless of quarterback, has been really good. And it looks like Davis Mills again. I'm going to continue to ride this wave with Schultz to a certain extent. And then Kyle Pitts versus Carolina. The matchup couldn't be better. Kyle Pitts is just on an offense that I don't trust. It's really as simple as that. I mean, I just do not trust this offense, and I do see a world where Kyle Pitts could eventually become like a massive big play tight end league winner, but I don't know what to do with him, man. I mean, he goes through weeks in several stretches where he gets a bunch of targets, like 7 or 8 a game, and then he goes through other stretches where he gets like 5 or 4. I mean, it's just so hard to predict with Kyle Pitts, but I will say this. It's been better than most years with Pitts, so I do think he's still playable. And then Colson Loveland's at 16 to round out the tight ends. At Minnesota, I don't like the matchup, but I will tell you this. I was this close to ranking Loveland over Pitts because in one of my personal leagues, very competitive league, Kyle Pitts and Colston Loveland is my decision. I'm going to go with Pitts over Loveland because of matchup. Loveland, I still think there is that threat of Cole Kmet with him being back in the lineup. I don't think that they're going to switch back to him, but I don't rule it out. So I do think you kind of have to factor Cole Kmet into Colson Loveland's ranking along with the brutal matchup here. Now going to our tight end rankings here, Drake May is in tier 1 and Josh Allen is also in tier 1 as well. So Drake May tonight, I think, is the best play of the week. It's against the Jets defense, for crying out loud. I mean, the Browns were able to put up 20 points on them. That's not a lot, but the Jets defense is just not very good, and I don't think that New England's offense will slow down. So to me personally, I love Drake May this week. And Josh Allen versus Tampa. On one hand, this could be kind of, again, a grosser game where Josh Allen maybe doesn't do as well from the throwing perspective. But on the other hand, I look at it and I say, well, if it's one of those games, Josh Allen's rushing upside, maybe they don't feed James Cook as much. The bottom line is that Josh Allen is still a dominant quarterback in fantasy for the most part. And yeah, sometimes he's not hitting the massive ceiling weeks, but it's always there. And in any matchup, he can do it. So that's kind of the way I look at this one. And usually why he'll never be outside of tier 1, to be honest with you. Now, here's a guy that usually wouldn't be out of tier 1, but he is this week, dropping down to the next tier. Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson at Cleveland this week. So he missed practice on Wednesday because of knee soreness. Now, they're expecting him to play. That's not the problem. But I have this problem with Lamar because I've been watching him play and I don't feel like he's fully healthy. And I think it's being proven over time with the missed practices and the just kind of moves that he would usually make that he's not making. And at Cleveland, this could get really nasty. Again, this weather game is a little sketchy, but it is Lamar. I mean, we can't rank him much lower than this because we know Lamar has a 30-point ceiling. So I don't want to rank him too much lower than this, but against a tougher matchup in a bad weather game and a less than 100% Lamar, I'm going to put him in tier 2 this week. Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts are at the 4 and 5. Dallas is going to come in very emotionally motivated because of the death of Marshawn Nealon. Rest in peace. I do think Dak and the Cowboys are going to get up to play in this one. And it's not like it's a super tough matchup. I mean, the Raiders just held the Broncos to very few points. The reality is that was a divisional game. It was weird, short week. Anything can happen. I do think that Dallas coming off the bye week is at an advantage this week with everything going on in that team. And we all know how high upside Dak Prescott is as a fantasy player. Jalen Hurts at 5 versus Detroit, I do think is in a position to where, again, I could see it going a couple different ways. Either this is a high-scoring game or it's a low-scoring game, and I don't know which way I'm leaning. I mean, Philly's offense is so weird. The one week they didn't have A.J. Brown, they did great. Like, they actually did very well, and I do think that's the reason why I ultimately think A.J. is holding back the offense. Jalen Hurts is clearly rattled when A.J. Brown is in there because A.J. is always chirping at him. And I just think that Jalen Hurts still does have a really safe floor if you take out 2 games this year where he's done basically 11 points. So if his floor is 11, not ideal, but it's also not terrible when his ceiling is about 30 points. So I've got to have him still inside the top 5. Justin Herbert at 6, and Caleb is at 7 to round out this tier. So Justin Herbert at Jacksonville, matchup is really good. I don't worry about it. The one thing I worry about this one is last week against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had some pressure on Herbert, but I would say that there's going to be better pass rushes that they will play. Is it Jacksonville? Probably not, because Jacksonville hasn't gotten that many sacks this year. So I do think he's a top 10 player, clearly, because he has been for the most of the season. But at some point, that offensive line will let him down. So I've got to kind of mitigate risk by ranking him at number 6. And then Caleb at 7 at Minnesota. I think it could go a couple different ways. They could either have a very similar outcome to the last time they played, which is that Caleb is always a rushing threat, and he could get points on the ground, but then collapse at the end because Minnesota's defense is very good. Or they are just really clicking right now, which they are, and they continue to do that. Because Minnesota has the opposite of momentum, and Chicago has momentum. So I am kind of leaning towards Caleb being a really good play in this one. He's done mostly well in this season for fantasy, so I'm going to continue to ride that wave in a lot of situations. Dropping down to our next tier, Baker Mayfield's at 8, and Joe Flacco is at 9. So with Baker at Buffalo, again, matchup could get a little nasty. And listen, I think Baker is good to a point, but we do have to acknowledge that Baker has not been great this year. Like, Baker last year in fantasy was awesome because all his weapons were clicking. Everything was explosive down the field. I mean, he has like Buka and he has Auden, and that's it. So you do have to factor that into the future of Baker Mayfield because that's going to continue to be the problem. Now, Buffalo is easily beatable, so I do like the matchup, and I do think there's opportunity, but I'm going to mitigate risk here by having him down here at 8 because of a bad weather game. And then Joe Flacco at 9. At Pittsburgh, you should be able to see another high-scoring, potent offensive matchup, which is why Joe Flacco's got to be top 10 this week. Still dealing with the shoulder injury, on his throwing shoulder, not ideal, and that offensive line is so bad that I would not put it past the Steelers to get some pressure on him. I do think it's possible. It's in Pittsburgh this time. Joe Flacco could be under more duress, but I'm still going to ride with the weapons that are in Cincinnati, which are still some of the best in the entire league. I think Joe Flacco and the Bengals probably a little more energized too now that they know that Cincinnati will have Joe Burrow potentially in a couple more weeks. So they're going to be ready to play in this game off of a bye week. Jared Goff is at 10 to round out the tier. At Philadelphia, again, this matchup is so confusing, man. Because on one hand, I look at this and I say, I think that Detroit with the play calling shift with Dan Campbell is a really good thing. I do think it has a lot of potential to continue to roll. But Philly's defense looked dominant against Green Bay. Is it because Green Bay sucks? Maybe that's the case. I still think they have enough explosive upside to where you have to give the Eagles defense a lot of credit for their lack of performance this past week. So I do think Jared Goff and the Lions could be in for one of their maybe not so great games. I've got to mitigate the risk again with Jared Goff at number 10. Dropping down to our last tier. Patrick Mahomes lands at 11, and Matt Stafford is at 12. So with Mahomes, I love the player in fantasy. He's done great for the most part. This matchup sucks. At Denver, it's tough, man, because Kansas City is usually like dominant off a bye. Like, they're historic with Andy Reid off a bye week. At the same time, there is no pass rush like the Denver Broncos in the league. So I do think Mahomes will be under duress in this game, and that's his one weakness. You get him under pressure, he doesn't have the ability to shake that off always. Now, he can sometimes, which is why, like, Mahomes is Mahomes. He's going to make those plays, but I don't think the ceiling is there for this one. So I'm going to have him ranked accordingly at 11. And Matt Stafford, I also don't think the ceiling's in this one either. Matt Stafford has been great. Like, this is an MVP candidate. I think he's been fantastic this year, but Seattle is another one of those top 3 defenses in the league. Like, this does not feel like a ceiling matchup to me. So I've got to have him down here at 12. And I get it. I could look stupid. Like, the role that he's on right now is untouchable. So I wouldn't put it past him to be a top 5 quarterback this week. But I'm going to bet against him because I know what I've seen with Seattle's defense, which is unbelievable. And Bo Nix at 13 with Aaron Rodgers right behind him at 14. Bo Nix, this also doesn't feel like the greatest ceiling game either, but we've seen Bo Nix do these types of massive ceiling games against other opponents that are tough too. I hate the matchup against Kansas City off the bye week, but I do think Bo Nix is really itching to have a bounce back week because he looked abysmal last week. I mean, the questions and the uncertainty surrounding Bo Nix and his future in Denver is really getting louder. And that performance just stoked the flames. So I do think he's really itching for a bounce back week. I'll keep him inside the top 16 for that reason. Aaron Rodgers versus Cincinnati. In theory, he could do much better than this. But there's something about this team. They look so negative. They also just looked lethargic against the Chargers. Rodgers played his worst game of the year. Does he bounce back, or is it just kind of shutting down? I mean, this is one of the oldest teams in the league, and they always decrease their play come late November, early December. And that's what range we're at right now. Mid-November, we're starting to see this team play worse and worse each week. I do think there's a chance that he just continues this bad stretch, but against Cincinnati, I've got to have him inside the top 16. Mac Jones at 15, and Jacoby Brissett sneaks in the top 16 to round us out. Mac Jones in Arizona, I'm going to factor in that I think he's going to play and Brock Purdy will not. Maybe he'll even have Ricky Pearsall back. I don't know. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. We don't know the Thursday practice report as of the time of the filming. But Mac Jones, he's played really well. You just can't discount this guy. And against the matchup, I think is very beatable. I think that Mac could be really good once again this week. And then Jacoby Brissett in that same matchup versus San Fran, you cannot factor out how bad the 49ers defense has gotten. Robert Saleh, excellent defensive coordinator, but when you throw guys who have no business being out there in the field of play, you're just not going to have good results. And that's been the unfortunate fact with the 49ers this year. So Jacoby Brissett, even without Marvin, I still think is a top 16 quarterback play because of how bad this defense is. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings on the week, click on this video right here.